The Middle Ages weren't just an era of castles and kings, they were an era of steel. For nearly 1,000 years, swordsmiths across Europe and beyond experimented, refined, and perfected countless blade designs, each built for a very specific purpose. Some were made for quick duels, others were made to crush through plate armor. Some needed both hands just to lift. From the battlefield-tested arming sword carried by knights to the massive greatswords that could cut through multiple enemies at once, medieval warriors had an entire arsenal of deadly options to choose from. In this video, we're breaking down every major medieval sword type, how they were used, why they were designed the way they were, and what made each one uniquely dangerous. Let's start with the sword every knight carried first. Before the age of massive two-handed blades, there was the arming sword, the true workhorse of medieval combat. Emerging around the 11th century and remaining in use for hundreds of years, this single-handed, straight, double-edged sword was the default weapon for knights, men-at-arms, and soldiers across Europe. Typically measuring around 30 inches, the arming sword was light, fast, and perfectly balanced, designed to be paired with a shield in one hand and the blade in the other. This combination gave warriors both offense and defense in a single package, making it incredibly versatile on chaotic battlefields. Its design was simple but deadly, a tapered point for thrusting through gaps in armor, and sharp edges for slashing when the fight got close. Unlike heavier weapons, it didn't tire the wielder quickly, allowing knights to fight longer and react faster. The arming sword wasn't flashy, and it didn't need to be. It was reliable, practical, and deadly in trained hands, making it the go-to weapon for centuries of medieval warfare. But as armor evolved, swords had to evolve too. As armor grew heavier and battlefields grew more brutal, knights needed something with more reach, more power, and more versatility. Enter the longsword, arguably the most iconic weapon of the entire medieval period. Emerging around the 13th century and dominating combat through the 15th and 16th centuries, the longsword featured a longer blade, typically 35 to 47 inches, paired with an extended grip built for two hands. This wasn't just a bigger version of the arming sword, it was an entirely new fighting system. With both hands on the hilt, warriors could generate devastating cutting power, deliver precise thrusts through armor gaps, and even use the crossguard and pommel as striking tools in close-quarters grappling. Entire martial arts traditions, like German Fechtbücher and Italian swordsmanship manuals, were built around mastering this single weapon. What made the longsword truly dangerous wasn't just its size, it was its flexibility. A skilled fighter could switch between one-handed and two-handed grips mid-fight, adapting instantly to the situation. It could be used on foot or horseback, in open battle or duels of honor. The longsword became a symbol of knighthood itself, elegant, deadly, and demanding years of training to truly master. But some warriors wanted something even bigger, something built to smash through anything in its path. If the longsword was refined and versatile, the Zweihander was pure, overwhelming force. German for two-hander, this massive greatsword could reach lengths of up to 6 feet, sometimes taller than the soldier wielding it. Emerging in the late 15th and 16th centuries, the Zweihander was carried by elite mercenaries known as the Landsknechte, and specifically by an even more elite unit called the Doppelsoldner, literally double-pay soldiers. So named because wielding this monstrous weapon in battle was considered dangerous enough to earn double wages. The Zweihander's primary role wasn't dueling, it was battlefield destruction. These massive blades were used to break enemy pike formations, sweeping aside spears and creating openings for allied troops to charge through. Its sheer size meant a skilled wielder could keep multiple enemies at bay simultaneously, cutting through the air with terrifying momentum. Some Zweihanders featured wavy, flame-shaped blades known as flammards, believed to cause more traumatic wounds while also disrupting enemy weapons on contact. Wielding one required immense strength, exceptional training, and no small amount of courage. A warrior with a Zweihander was often surrounded, exposed, and utterly essential to his unit's survival. But not every deadly medieval sword relied on size and elegance. Some were built for one purpose only: butchery. Forget elegance and precision. The falchion was built for one thing: brutal, devastating cutting power. Popular from the 13th to 16th centuries, this single-edged sword featured a wide, curved blade that resembled something between a sword and a machete. Unlike the balanced, symmetrical design of the longsword or arming sword, the falchion's weight was concentrated toward the tip. This design choice was intentional. It turned every swing into a chopping, cleaving attack, similar to an axe. A single strike from a falchion could shear through flesh, and in some cases, even bite through lighter armor. The falchion was especially popular among foot soldiers and peasant levies, since it was cheaper and easier to forge than a fine double-edged blade, yet still devastatingly effective in close combat. Its design meant it required less finesse and technical training compared to weapons like the longsword, making it a practical, accessible weapon for common soldiers rushed into battle. Despite its simplicity, the falchion earned a fearsome reputation. Its brutal cutting ability made it a favorite for hacking through unarmored or lightly armored opponents in the chaos of melee combat. While knights trained for years to master elegant swordplay, the falchion proved that sometimes raw savagery was just as deadly. But as the medieval period drew to a close, sword design shifted once again, toward precision and speed. As armor became lighter and dueling culture grew across Europe, brute force gave way to precision. The rapier emerged in the late 15th and 16th centuries as the weapon of choice for nobles, duelists, and gentlemen defending their honor. Unlike the heavy cutting swords that came before it, the rapier was long, slender, and primarily designed for thrusting. Its narrow blade prioritized speed and reach over cutting power, allowing skilled fencers to strike quickly while presenting a smaller target to their opponent. The rapier wasn't really a battlefield weapon. It was a civilian weapon, worn as much for status as for self-defense. Carrying one signaled wealth, rank, and a willingness to defend one's reputation. This gave rise to entire schools of fencing across Italy, Spain, and France, where swordsmanship became a refined art form rather than a battlefield skill. Despite its elegant appearance, the rapier was far from harmless. A precise thrust could slip between ribs or into vital organs before an opponent even registered the attack. Duels fought with rapiers were fast, tense, and often fatal within seconds. The rapier marked a turning point, with the shift from the age of armored knights to the age of personal honor, dueling codes, and civilian swordsmanship. But medieval sword design wasn't confined to Europe alone. While European knights swung longswords and rapiers, a completely different sword design was dominating battlefields across the Middle East, Persia, and Central Asia: the scimitar and its Persian cousin, the shamshir. Defined by its distinctive curved blade, the scimitar was built primarily for slashing rather than thrusting. This curve allowed the blade to slice through flesh with a natural drawing motion, making each strike incredibly efficient. Especially for cavalry warriors slashing down at enemies while riding at full speed. The shamshir, meaning curved like a lion's claw, took this design even further with an extreme curve and a razor-sharp edge, optimized purely for cutting. Unlike heavier European blades, these swords were lightweight and fast, allowing warriors to deliver rapid, fluid strikes in quick succession. These blades became deeply tied to warrior cultures across the Islamic world, from Mamluk cavalry to Persian nobility, often lavishly decorated as symbols of status and skill. While European swords evolved around armor-piercing thrusts, the scimitar and shamshir proved that in the right hands a curved blade could be just as lethal, fast, fluid, and devastating in open combat. From the practical, battle-ready arming sword to the iconic two-handed longsword, the devastating Zweihander, the brutal falchion, the precise rapier, and the fast curved scimitar and shamshir. The medieval world produced an incredible variety of blades, each shaped by the battles, cultures, and warriors who wielded them. What's fascinating is that no single best sword ever existed. Every design was a trade-off, and between speed and power, precision and brute force, elegance and practicality. The right sword depended entirely on who was fighting, how they were trained, and what kind of battle they were facing. The Middle Ages weren't just an age of knights and castles, they were an age of constant innovation in steel, where every new threat on the battlefield gave rise to a new blade built to counter it. So, which medieval sword do you think you'd want in your hand on the battlefield? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into medieval weaponry, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more history content like this.